So today I'm going to talk about my leadership journey. As you know, that March was International Women's Day, and Elizabeth thought it might be good for me to share my story. So, to tell you the lessons in leadership that I've learned, I'd like to start off by first giving you a little background about myself and how I got to be where I am today and the lessons I learned along the way. I am, I think, very lucky. Maybe it's a set of coincidences that worked out in my favor. I'm the youngest of five. I only have sisters, no brothers, so there was no discrimination in my household. I was also very fortunate to have a mother who dinned it into our heads, me and my sisters, that we had to be self sufficient and independent. I don't know how many times my mom would tell us that. She would say, "You don't know what may happen in life, but you need to be able to stand on your own feet no matter what." And she said, "All I can do is make sure that all five of you have a good education and you can stand on your own feet." And I think my mom did a great service to all of us. So all my sisters and I have master's degrees or higher, had careers. But I was still a very shy, quiet child, in spite of all that my mother tried so hard to instill in me. And when I was 3 years old, my family moved to Africa as my father had a job for the United Nations. So when I started school there, the teacher that I had, my first grade teacher, and some of you may have heard parts of this, he was this tall, big man, like a heavyset Denzel Washington. And he liked the children to stand up and answer the question. And since I was so shy and quiet, I would just stand up and whisper. And he would say, "Speak up." And I would just tremble and whisper even more. But I had a wonderful childhood in Africa, don't get me wrong. It was lovely. I had wonderful friends. The school was great. It's just that I was extremely shy. So when I was about 11 years old, my family moved back to India. And since I'd grown up in Africa, I had this Nigerian accent. And anytime I opened my mouth, the kids would start laughing at me in India. So my parents put me in Catholic school. So we all wore uniform. So I looked like all the other kids. But anytime the teacher asked a question and I had to answer, they would start laughing. And I still remember in my, you know how you have to take these languages? So I had to take Sanskrit and Hindi. And the teacher would ask you, this Sanskrit teacher would ask you to stand up in class and read. So I clearly remember this because it was quite traumatic for me. She would say, "Okay, children, no laughing, everyone, no laughing, okay?" And she'd look at me, "Child, go ahead, read." So in my best Sanskrit, accent, Indian accent, I'd pick up the book and I'd be reading, and the teacher would be like this. And then she'd be like, "No laughing, children, no laughing. Continue, child." And I thought, and so I was reading with my best accent, and she would be like, it was awful. So I survived school in India. And luckily, in India, I think because of our population, because of the number of people, it's very cold and logical. So they're like, what, you like math? Okay, engineering is a good occupation because that you can find a job. It's very logical and practical. It's not, what is it you'd like to do? It's none of that I see here in America. It's, let us find a practical career for you. So that's how I ended up in engineering in India. And there were like 13 girls in my class. So then I graduated. I got a job in a company, a small company at the time named Infosys. You may have heard of that. Currently, that company's stock is sold on NASDAQ today. It's like the Microsoft of India. But who knew? At the time, it was a small company out of a house. And my dad said, "What are you working in this tiny company for? You should go to America, land of opportunity." And my mom is like, "Wait. What are you sending this young girl all by herself to this foreign country?" So I made a deal with my mom that if I stayed with my sister, who was in the US I could go to college. And so that's how I came to the US for my master's. At that time, there was no internet, and my sister wasn't really good at communicating. So by the time I got admission and got my visa, my sister wrote to say, "Oh, guess what? I've joined the US Army and I'm going to Germany." And my mom is like, "What? You going to America and your sister's not there? That was the deal." And I said, "No, no, no, I'm going. I'm going." So I came to the US. I didn't know anybody here. I saw my sister for a month and I went to college. And I think you may have heard this. To my shock, I was the only girl in all my engineering classes in the US. So I would try and sit in the last row and blend in. And eventually the teacher would spot me and would say, "Ah, you there in the last row. Can you come up? Can you write on the board? Can you answer this question?" Because it was a novelty to have a girl in the only girl in all these engineering classes. So I somehow survived that, graduated, and got a job. Now, how did I join Toastmasters? So, being in the US as a foreign student, the rules are that you can only work on campus if you want to work. And I needed money to pay for my tuition at the time. So, being a desperate foreign student, I went to every department on campus to see if I could find work. And I eventually did. And I was the graduate coordinator of the Peer Counseling Center, and they were very pleased with me, and I was having a good time when my professor of electrical engineering asked me, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in the counseling center." And he says, "What is an engineering student doing in the counseling center?" And I said, "No, no, it's okay, Dr. Cohen. They're willing to pay for my tuition. I'll just come, keep working there." And he says, "No, give it up and come work for me. I'll give you a research assistantship." Now there's a point to this story, so hang in there. So I give up the counseling job. I start doing research for him. It's not even 2 months. He calls me in and he says, "I'm sorry, I've lost my funding." And I'm like, "What? You made me give up that sure job that I had to work for you?" And he saw it in my face and he says, "Can you teach?" I'd never taught in my life. I was barely 24 years old, but when you're a desperate foreign student, I said, "Yes, yes, I can do it." And next thing you know, I'm teaching electromechanical energy conversion, EE 335, to juniors. I have such a great respect for teachers. I would spend the whole day before the class studying and studying and studying so that the next day I could teach that class in front of 25, 30 students. And American students, they're quite, they have a lot of confidence, they ask questions. So I had to be well prepared. So I say this to you that I was able to stand and teach a class, and I graduated and I got a job. Fast forward a few years, my family comes to visit, and one of my sisters says, "Hey, guess what? The whole family is here. Let's have a celebration for dad. It's his birthday." And I said, "Yes, great idea. I'll take care of it." And one of my sisters in the middle of that says, "Let's have a toast." And I'm not really paying that close attention. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sure, no worries." I find the restaurant, I go over the menu, go over the guest list. It's a beautiful September day. All the guests arrive. My father has a great time. The lunch is great. And of course, as you can tell, time for the toast. My older sister speaks, my next sister, it comes down to me being the youngest, and I'm holding the glass and it's shaking. And all I can say is like, "To the best dad." It was one line, it was horrible. And I thought, I stood in front of class. I taught a class of 25, 30 students. I cannot stand in front of friends and family and say a few words for my dad. It was terrible. And my sister at the time belonged to a Toastmasters club in India. And she knew nothing about areas, divisions, districts, nothing. There were only 7 clubs between India and Sri Lanka. She was fortunate enough to belong to one of those clubs. And she told me, "You need Toastmasters. You better join." And I'm like, "All right," but I didn't join right away. It was kind of in my head. So meanwhile, working in the US, I thought I'm just graduated from school. I'm just a kid. What do I know? I'll show respect. I'll listen to the discussion. So I would listen. Not even a few weeks, my boss called me outside. He's like, "Do you understand what's going on? You're so quiet." And I thought I was showing respect. I thought I was being quiet and listening to people who knew more than me. He saw it as being disengaged, not participating. He's like, "Why don't you speak up?" Now, it's easier said than done. And being in an engineering field, it's mostly men. And I generalize here, but Americans speak with such confidence. And sometimes I would be thinking in my head, that's wrong, that's not right. But I couldn't speak up and say, no, 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 that's not exactly how it should be. So when a club formed in my company at AT&T, I joined. And I tell you, like everyone says, like most Toastmasters says, I wish I joined sooner. It's a best kept secret, and it helped me tremendously. Looking back, I wish I was in a youth leadership program. It would have helped me in school, it would have helped me on in my journey. I wish, but anyway, I'm still fortunate to have found it when I did, and it helped me a lot. And I have to say, I learned so many leadership lessons along the way, and I'd like to share some of them with you. So I have to admit that when we chartered the club, since it was a brand new club, I became a club officer day one, and that was a good experience. And then I'll admit I became an area director or area governor as it was called solely to get to DTM because I heard you need a district um, credit for 1 year to get to DTM. But I tell you, that opened my eyes. I didn't know there was a whole world outside my club. I had to arrange an area contest. I had to do so many things. And it was, really opened my mind. So think about it. If you're running an area contest, it's like being a project manager, right? You're doing critical thinking, problem solving, you're delegating, you have to worry about situations that may arise, how to solve it. So this was a wonderful experience. Not that I realized it, that I was learning all these things, but looking back, I realized I learned a lot. And then as you may have heard, someone nominated me for division governor, as we do nowadays. And of course, I thought, wow, someone thinks I can be a division governor. Like, wow. I was unopposed. I go to the district conference. I'm met at the door by my mentor, Nick. And Nick says, "Hey, Radhi, do you have your 2 minute speech ready?" I said, "Nick, I don't need a 2 minute speech. I'm unopposed." And he's like, "Well, what, those days you could get nominations from the floor, and someone might get nominated." He's like, "You better get the 2 minute speech ready." And I'm like, "No, no, don't worry, I'm unopposed." So I was running for division I. As you heard, we were one of the largest districts in the world. We had 10 divisions, and it was a ways to get to division I. So there I am sitting during the business meeting, and they had the elections for the district governor and the lieutenant governor of education and training and so on. And then they ask, "Are there any nominations from the floor?" And someone raises their hand. And next thing I know, a motivational speaker was nominated to run for my division. And at just that instant, the person sitting next to me nudges me. And I'm like, "What?" And they said, "Give it up. Someone else is willing to do the work. Why do you want to do it? You don't have to do it now. You can step down." And I tell you, in that split second, if I had given in, it would have changed my whole life. I would not be here today. Fortunately, I resisted. I said, "No, no, I got time. They're still working on Division A. By the time they get to Division I have enough time to come up with a 2 minute speech." So I still remember when it came to Division B, and I'm sorry, why I don't know why I remember this, but the two people running were like Virginia Arana versus Robert Archdeacon. And I remember Robert in his 2 minute speech saying, "And my name is Robert Archdeacon, and there's no S at the end of my name." And I thought, who thought there was an S? And what's that got to do with anything? Like, what is this 2 minute speech? But it just gave me an idea because those days, Britney Spears was very popular. So when I went up, I said, "My name is Radhi Spear," and there's no S at the end of my name, which is stupid. But they got the people laughing. I told them about my qualifications, and fortunately, I won. But looking back, I just realized that words are powerful in the positive or negative way. I could have given in and not been here where I am today. I'm lucky that I stayed on. But that was one of the earlier lessons I learned without only looking back that I learned. But the lessons that I learned that I want to talk about today was I then ran for Lieutenant Governor of Marketing, which is the CGD role. I have to say, throughout my Toastmasters journey, I have been challenged for every role. And I think it just makes you a better candidate. I think I've been lucky to be challenged because it kind of makes me feel like I'm going to show these people I can do it. I don't know. It just gets me more motivated. So when I ran for Lieutenant Governor of Marketing, I was challenged and I fortunately was successful. And so we would go to these deck meetings, and my district governor would be telling everyone, "We are the best. We are number one. We are District 46. We can do it." And I would just repeat blindly. I had no idea what she was saying. I would just repeat it. "Oh, yes, we are the greatest. We are the best." And then in the subsequent meeting, one of the area governors asked me, they're like, "Are we the best? Are we number one?" And I had no idea. You think the dashboard is bad today? Those days we didn't, it couldn't, it wasn't easy to read the dashboard. We had a district statistician. So we called him and I'm like, "Where do we stand? We're happily telling everyone that we are number one and we are the best." And those days there were about 86 districts and we were like all the way down. I don't know, quite close to the bottom. And I'm like, "Oh no, we're going around telling everyone we are the best, we're the greatest, and we're not." So then I had 51 areas at the time. So for every area governor, I found out, look, you had to make two visits. In those days, we had what they called a competent communicator, advanced communicator awards. That would be like, you need so many more awards, you need so much of this, you need to make these visits, you need at least so many clubs to be distinguished. So I actually sent 51 emails so they knew how they would be measured. Because first of all, you need to know how you're going to be measured. So you know what you need to do. And I said, if you have any questions about that, you can let me know. So we actually started focusing on what our district needed to do. And fortunately, by the end of the year, we were distinguished. But what lesson I learned there was a leader's words are very important. People are listening, people are observing. You may think you're just saying something. It was surprising to me that they were actually following what I said. And I realized I had to keep my word. I couldn't just say anything, and it was, we needed to lead by example. So that was my first lesson that I learned. The second lesson that I learned was that we used to have regional conferences locally where we had our training. So media training wasn't like how it is right now where everyone travels to some other country. I had my media training, I think, in Pennsylvania one year and once in New Jersey. So when we had gone to the media training, I remember the other district leaders in our region telling us, "Wow, District 46, you have so many education awards. It's amazing." And I know my district governor was like this tiger mom. She's like, "What are you implying by that? Of course, District 46, we are great. Of course, we got all these education awards." And she defended us. And we came back and we kind of like, why are these people saying all these things? So we go and we look. And sure enough, there are clubs with 6 members and 4 awards and, 8 members and 6 awards. I mean, it was all too good to be true. And, when you're in a district trio, as some of you know, it's like you're married, right? How do you ask the other person, are you cheating? Like, is something wrong here? Like, how do we have all these educational awards? So we kind of asked him, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, they go on business trips and they give speeches." And we're like, "Really?" So then we even called TI to ask for their advice. And I don't know, at the time I thought they were a little bit wishy-washy. They didn't give us clear answers. And then we did our own investigation and realized that every single club that had these paper education awards, he was either the mentor, the sponsor, or a member of the club. Like it was a smoking gun that we found. And so we asked our legit to please step down. And and he did. But the lesson I learned was there is no, if you can take shortcuts, if you there is no, you're not helping the people, you're not, there is no value in this, it's completely meaningless. And that's why be having integrity in a nonprofit organization like ours is so important. What's the point in getting an award if you never worked at it? It's totally meaningless. So that was a huge lesson that I learned right at the start of my journey. I'm like, wow, you know, they trust us. So I feel a leader should be trustworthy, which is two things. You need to have integrity and you need to have competence. If you just have integrity and can't get the job done, that's no good. And if you cut corners and get the job done, that's even worse. So you need to be able to get the work done and you need to have integrity. And that's something that I learned. And the third lesson that I learned that I wanted to share with you today was those days, to get a competent communicator, you had to give 10 speeches. And my district statistician told me that those awards came in during the month of May and June. So we would go through the whole year not knowing how close we were to getting those awards. And so we would go through all the area director reports and constantly write, like, have you done this, and follow up and whatnot. And I happened to go to India on vacation, and my sister invited me to her club. And I was shocked to see that they met every week and they met for 3 hours, and people had the opportunity to speak. And it was a light bulb. I'm like, we meet every 2 weeks for an hour, hardly any speakers. Of course, we can't meet our educational goals. And here they are meeting every week. So I came back and, like an authoritarian, I declared, we're meeting every week. And my district leaders look at me and like, what? What do you mean we're meeting every week? No, we're not. And and then I realized a leader has to lead by example. I mean, I've spent all this time worrying about the problem and worrying about how to solve it, but I haven't shared my logic or my thinking or why. And you need to explain that. You need to share your vision and you need to get buy-in. So finally, I told my home club, please let us show them, give me 6 months, at least 6 months, let's try this. And they're like, what? No, I said, please, just 6 months, let's meet every week. And I have to say, till this day, AT&T Middletown meets every week on Mondays, 12 to 1, and it works. So we managed to be distinguished. We tried pushing new clubs when they chartered to meet more frequently. Because if you just meet once in 2 weeks or once a month, you lose the momentum if that meeting falls on a holiday or something like that. So we have to make sure we meet regularly. So those are like the three key lessons that I learned. In terms of chartering the clubs, Elizabeth asked me this question. I have to say, being an engineer, working just with inanimate objects with my computer, I don't have much experience marketing or sales or any of that. So the way I saw it was, I truly believe in the program. Toastmasters has helped me so much. I felt all I had to do was reverse engineer it. So initially, I spoke to all the lieutenant governors of marketing in my district, keeping in mind those who were successful and those who are not. It's like when my daughter goes to college, I would tell her, when you borrow notes, borrow it from the A student, don't borrow it from the failed student, because you want to make sure you do well. So I interviewed all the lieutenant governors of marketing to find out what they did, because I had gone to training, but I came back from training thinking, okay, I know what I have to do, but I don't know how. It's like, go climb Everest. Okay, I know that's what I'm supposed to do, but how? I don't know how. So I asked everyone what they did, how they did with that. And I just reversed engineered it. So if I wanted to start a club, what do I want to know? What are the forms to fill? What kind of support do I get? How many members do I need? So I just tried to put myself in their shoes. And if I got a lead, I would call them and tell them, we will send you a demonstration team. We will get you two sponsors, two mentors. They will guide you for 6 months. So I just reversed it. That's all. I put myself in their shoes and I would say, please don't send the forms till I've looked through it all. I would check every form, make sure everything was filled. Because if you send it piecemeal and Toastmasters loses part of it to get it all together and then charter the club, becomes difficult. So I wanted to make sure everything was in order before we sent it in. So it's just basics like that. So I just believed in the program, and I wanted others to benefit from him. And every time I chartered a club, I felt I was giving them a gift. It made me feel good. I mean, being a Hindu, we didn't really have Christmas, but now I understand it better because it makes you feel good when you give someone something that you know will help them for the rest of their lives. I always thought I was doing them a good deed when they chartered a club, when I got a member to join. Now, some of the other things along the way was I did get married. I did have 2 kids. Some people ask me about work-life balance. I have to say it is very hard to do. You have to be very intentional. Something's got to give. So the house is not clean. So I didn't get to do something, right? Because you can't do it all. And Toastmasters become so much fun that you start neglecting work. So you have to be disciplined. You have to make sure, like, from this time to this time, I'm going to do this. And that's the only way, because it's very hard to do it all. And I want to go to the gym. I want to see my friends. I want to do Toastmasters. I want to do work. Something's got to give. So as if you can accept that and decide what is important and stick to it, I think you will do well. And one other thing that helped in my favor was when we moved back to India, Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, and I never thought anything of it. So in my mind, seeing a woman prime minister, I thought, oh, as it just goes in line with what my mother would tell me about our sisters, that we should stand on our own feet, we can do anything we want, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I was very fortunate to have that. So when I had my 2 daughters, and I did this deliberately and as best as I could, I made sure that any person of responsibility that they came across, if I could help it, I would pick women pediatricians, women dentists, women volleyball. I just wanted them to see women in positions of authority and leadership. Not that I would have to say anything to them, but I was hoping that would influence them. So those are the few things that I did for my kids. I'm happy to say they're both doing extremely well. And I made them both do youth leadership when they were in middle school because I wished I had it. And I know this sounds like a proud mother, but I am. When my daughter went to Cornell and studied chemical and biomolecular engineering and had to give a presentation, her professor said, I have never seen an engineering student speak so well. How come? And she said Toastmasters. She had never belonged to a club. All she had done was youth leadership, but children absorb it like sponges. It really helped her. And both my kids, I think, benefited from the youth leadership program, which I wish I had when I was a kid. So all I want to say to everyone here is that, there are many things we cannot control in our lives, but we can play the cards that life has dealt us to the best of our abilities by improving our communication and leadership skills. We have Toastmasters that has been in existence 100 years. This is a tried and tested method. This method works. We're in 150 countries. All we have to do is follow their guidelines. And as my sister, a psychiatrist who's always shocked when she sees me that you were the shyest one and you speak so much and you speak with such confidence. When she gets patients who say, Doctor, I don't want to take medicine for my anxiety or for my panic attacks, she tells them, go join Toastmasters. And she says, it works. So I have proof, even from a doctor, how good our program works. She keeps saying we have to give her a cut, but so this program really works. And I hope anyone watching this or listening this will go check it out and join Toastmasters. With that, back to you, Elizabeth.